Dear students, this is our third lecture in these online classes on the subject of Pakistani literature in English. In our last lecture, we were discussing the novel The Crow Eaters by Pepsi Sidhwa, and at the end of that lecture, we discussed the characterization of this novel and how Pepsi Sidhwa has delineated her characters. Now, in this lecture, we are continuing with the same novel, and we are going to discuss some other aspects which are very important when we go through this novel. And for that purpose, today we are going to discuss the social and cultural presentation of the Parsi families, because we see that in The Crow Eaters, Pepsi Sidhwa has presented a factual commentary upon the social and cultural practices of Parsi families. She herself, we know, belongs to a Parsi family. So, as a person who is from within these families, she depicts a factual detail of how these people live socially and what is their culture. And we would see, and it is famous, well known about the Parsis, that they are business-minded community, and they have very rich culture and traditions, and we are familiar with this rich culture and tradition through this novel. Another feature of these families is that they are very loyal to their rulers. Then, the third aspect. First aspect was the characterization, and the second is the social and cultural presentation of the Parsi families. And the third aspect that we are going to discuss today is feminism in The Crow Eaters. And there are some other important issues that we will discuss briefly at the end of our lesson. And as usual, at the end, I would give you some exercises for solution. Now, we move forward to the first aspect of The Crow Eaters by Pepsi Sidhwa. Actually, this is the second one, as I want to remind you that the first aspect that we have discussed in our previous lecture was the characterization in The Crow Eaters. And this is the social and cultural presentation of the Parsi families. The first quality that we come to know about the Parsi families is that they are business-minded community. And right from the beginning, when Freddie migrates to Lahore, he starts his business from scratch, from a very common kind of store. But with the passage of time, we come to know that he proves himself the best business person in that area, and his business expands with the passage of time. So actually, Freddie is the representative of the Parsi families, and it is very well known about them that they are basically very business-minded community. Now, The Crow Eaters is a good example of realistic fiction. How? Because as an insider, Pepsi Sidhwa realistically gives us the detail of the culture and social behavior of her community. And it is not a very something very common with especially those people who belong to a minority community. because they always try to defend their community and they try to hide the weaknesses of their community. But here, Sidhwa has the perception, the moral courage, and unsentimental approach. This is the tribute presented to Pepsi Sidhwa by Tariq Rahman. And how she is unsentimental? Because she is not emotional at any point of this novel. She could be sentimental, very much sentimental. She belongs to this community and she can present this community as a minority community and she could present it sentimentally, but she has the moral courage to speak the truth. She comes out on the pages of the Crow Eaters with the facts and with the truth. That is the moral courage that this lady has. Now, unsentimental presentation of religious community, it is minority community we know, and she is not emotional. She has presented a very dispassionate kind of picture, realistic picture of this religious community. They are business minded, and the behavior of, as we have already discussed, behavior of the main character Freddy with the customers shows that he is business minded and he is representative of all the Parsi families in this novel, and he is successful in that area despite the fact that he belongs to a minority community, but he runs his business very well and he is very successful at the end. Another thing that we note in this novel, that he plans successfully to collect money through insurance company. We know when we go through this novel that he shifts all his goods of the store to another place, and he sets his store on fire, and he claims from the insurance company for his losses, and insurance company pays him a very handsome amount. And the next phase of his business is based upon this handsome amount that he has collected through his plan, a successful plan from the insurance company, and he proves himself a very successful businessman when he starts his business with this money that he has collected from the insurance company. So this also shows that he was a very good planner and he needs money at that time in order to spread and make his business successful, and he plans it very successfully, and he gets a handsome amount, and in this way he enlarges his business. So that also shows that he has a very sharp mind, and he has a business mind. That is why he plans it very successfully. Then the clash between Freddy and Giovanni, we have already discussed in the summary of this novel, that this is a very interesting kind of clash that is going on between Freddy and his mother-in-law Giovanni. And in the initial stages, actually this interesting clash and conflict between these two persons that moves the plot of the novel forward. So from these, there is another interesting point about this clash and conflict between these two persons, that through this clash and through this conflict, we get a peep inside this community, inside the culture of this community, and we also come to know that it is well-knit, close and complicated kind of family system, because these are the people who have migrated to Lahore, and Giovanni was not interested, and she even resisted this kind of migration. And actually the clash between Freddy and Giovanni is the result of this resistance from Giovanni, because she was not ready to migrate to Lahore, and it was against her will that this family has migrated, and she has to migrate with this family because she does not have any other option. And but this clash and this complicated family system gives us a chance to look inside this community. And actually this is this is the realistic nature and moral courage of the author, that is Betsy Sidhwa, that she gives us the inside story of this community. Then, from the same clash that is going on between Freddie and Gerbano, Gerbano uses a very typical kind of language that is normally used you must have listened in many of our homes and in many of our families. For example, one of the example that she uses such kind of language, she says at one point in novel, "Why you not have bought water bite you?" So same kind of perhaps sentences you might have listened in many homes and in many families. So by using this typical kind of language, we come to familiarize with the fact that how the common ladies and common gentlemen, what kind of language they were using inside their family. Then we also come to know that Parsis are basically superstitious kind of community, and they believe in superstitions very much. For example, Freddie takes help from a mystic to get rid of Gerbano. He has become sick of this clash and the fights and quarrels that take place daily in their home. So at one point of time he goes to a mystic to get rid of Gerbano, and this shows that this is a very superstitious kind of community. Then another aspect of this family is that they have a very rich culture and traditions. Actually, this family is the representative of the Parsi community, and through this family we come to know and we come to familiarize of how rich a culture and tradition this community possesses. For example, Yazdi mixes salt in water as indication that he wants to marry. So this was a kind of a trick, or this was a trick to indicate to the elders that someone wants to marry in the family. And what was that? What was the method of indicating this wish of some member of the family? That usually that person mixes salt in the water, and when some elder one of the family used to drink that water, he or she comes to know that someone wants to marry. So at one point in novel, when Yazdi wants to marry Rosie, who is an Anglo-Indian girl, he mixes salt in water, and his father, that is Freddie, comes to know that some member of the family wants to marry, and then he inquires from the young people, Yazdi and Soli and his daughter Yasmin, who is going to marry. And at the end, Yazdi comes forward and he says that actually he has mixed that salt in water. So this is this indicates a very rich culture in that community. Then Yazdi is not allowed to marry an Anglo-Indian girl outside his community. This also shows that it was a well-knit community, and Parsis were not allowed to marry someone who is outside the community. And Yazdi tries his best to convince his father, but he fails, and Freddie does not allow him to marry outside the community. Next, another trait of this community is that they are very loyal to the rulers, and this is the most common and prominent trait of the Parsi community. And at that time we know the English were the rulers of United India, and the Parsi community was very loyal to the English. They have learned the lesson of being loyal to their English rulers because they were in minority, we know, and minority does have a sense of insecurity wherever they are living. And if some people are in minority, they have this sense of insecurity, and in order to secure themselves, they have to be loyal to the rulers, because such kind of communities believe that it is the rulers who could protect them. So naturally, Parsis were in minority, and they have this sense of insecurity in United India. So that is why they have opted this loyalty to the rulers. Because minorities, wherever they always struggle for survival. They are small in numbers, and the majority is always dominant. And majority at that time in United India was also of Muslims and the Hindus. So they have to struggle for survival. Then they are always at the risk of the loss of identity, because a majority always tries to dominate the minority, and minority is always suffering with the fact that they lose identity at some point. Then they have to protect their ethnic traditions, because when you are in such kind of minority, then your ethnic traditions are also at risk. So it is a very long and a very severe kind of struggle that a minority has to fight in order to secure themselves, and it is actually the struggle for their survival. And these are the words that Freddie says at the end of the novel, almost at the end of the novel. He says, and these words will also show how they were struggling, and why this loyalty to the rulers was their prominent trait. He says, "We will stay where we are. Let Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, or whoever rule. What does it matter?" So Hindus were also in majority, and even Muslims and Sikhs were in majority as compared to this small minority of the Parsi community. So he says that it does not matter whoever is their rulers, they have to struggle for the survival. They have this sense of insecurity in their minds. So it does not matter to them who is their ruler. Even if the English were ruling at that time in the United India, they have to be loyal to the English. Now, Parsi families may be symbolic, and they represent any minority families in the struggle for survival. You may take these Parsi families as a symbol, because when we generalize the things, we see that whatever and wherever these minorities are, they have to struggle for survival. Even in the United India, the Muslims were in minority, and they were also struggling at some level for survival, and they were also trying to safeguard their identity and their ethnic traditions, their religious traditions. So we may take this Parsi family of Freddie as a symbol of some minority, and such minorities are always in the process for struggle, and they are always involved because they have to protect their identity as well as their traditions. Now we come to another topic that we may discuss when we go through this novel, and that is feminism. First, what is feminism? If we may discuss it briefly, then feminism focuses its attention to the social, political, economic, and psychological operations of patriarchy. So, in feminism, what we try to identify, we pay attention upon the social, political, and economic, as well as psychological operations of men in the society. What is their social behavior, how they are behaving politically, and whether their operations are exploiting the fair sex economically or psychologically. Then, another point that we may note briefly in feminism: how are women portrayed? How the characters of women portrayed generally in that piece of fiction? Then, how cultural effects contribute or influence the experience of women. There are cultural effects we know, and these are actually produced by the behavior and attitude of men in the society, and whether these are influencing or contributing in the experience of women, how much these are influencing, and whether these are influencing positively or negatively. That is also a kind of study that we normally make in the umbrella term of feminism. Now, if we focus on this novel, then migration of Freddie family to Lahore and resistance from Gerbano and her reaction. We know that Freddie family has migrated to Lahore, and Gerbano at that time does not agree to this kind of migration, and she tried to resist it, and even she tried to stop this migration, but as Freddie was insistent, so she has left with no option, and she has to migrate with this family to Lahore. And her clash with Freddie actually shows her reaction, and she was trying to react, and as a reaction she was always in conflict with Freddie. So this is the story of a woman, that is Gerbano, who was resistant, and then she was trying to react negatively against Freddie in the beginning of the novel, or in the first part of the novel. And but we know that not only Freddie migrated to Lahore, but he settled there, and the resistance and the reaction of Gerbano was not taken into account. Then the clash of Freddie with Gerbano also shows, and at the end we know that man in the shape of Freddie dominates. Not only his decision of migration was taken by the family and was accepted by the family, and the resistance of Gerbano dies with the passage of time, and the clash, which is very interesting in the start of the novel and in the first part of the novel, and actually this clash moves the first phase of the plot forward. So, but at the end we know that Gerbano leaves her resistance, and we see that a male dominates the family. Then Freddie's point of view at the time of choice for his future life partner. We know that when Freddie chooses Putli as his future life partner, what he sees that Putli is a very simple kind of girl, and she would do whatever he likes. So he wants to have a very stereotype of wife whose role is fixed by Freddie, and she plays that role throughout the novel and throughout her life. So this shows that what kind of qualities a male was trying to see in his future life partner, and how the future life partner, that is Putli, behaves according to the line, and she plays the role which she was supposed to play by Freddie. Putli proves a stereotype wife, plays the role assigned to her. So we know that in feminism we see whether the women or the female characters are playing the role assigned to them, or they are trying to deviate from that role. And here we see that Putli proves a stereotype kind of wife. and she exactly plays the role which was assigned to her by her husband. And then other point that we should note, Putli opposes her mother when she feels that the peace of her home is being disturbed. At one point of time, and Putli observes that the clash of her husband Freddie and her mother Germano has gone to such limit that even the peace of the home is being disturbed and is being affected by this clash. So she takes the side of her husband and she interferes to stop her mother from disturbing this peace of the home. Then another point that we should note, Yazdi's marriage with an Anglo-Indian girl is not allowed. So it is again the dominant role of the family member, that is Freddie, who is actually the chief of this family, and he stops his son to marry outside his community. So again it is actually Yazdi who is being stopped from marrying outside the family. Billy rejects Roshan and marries her sister Tanya. Actually, Billy goes to Bombay to marry Roshan as it was arranged. But when he lands in that home of Roshan, he falls in love with Tanya. We see here that Billy is a male person, male character of this novel, and his choice dominates. Actually, he rejects one girl to marry the other one. It means that the choice is with the male persons of the family, and here one female is rejected and another is chosen by Billy, but his will and his wish dominates. This shows men have authority in the family. Women have to obey them, whether it is Putli or it is Roshan or it is Tanya. All these female characters, they have to obey the male characters. Men do all kind of significant work. Women's role is of no significance. That is also a very important point that we normally note when we identify the elements of feminism. Because here in this novel, all the significant work that is of business, for example, are the outdoor activities. All these works are done by male characters, and the role of women character or the female character is again of very stereotype, and they only play that role which is assigned to them by their male partners. Then these were the main issues that we can discuss in this novel, that is the characterization. Then we have discussed the social and cultural presentation of Parsi community, and then we have also now discussed the feminism in this novel. There are some other issues that we may discuss in this novel. One of that issue is the title, The Crow Eaters. Why Befsi Sidhwa has given this title? She has given this title because it is said about the Parsi families and the members of these families that they are very talkative. They talk much. So it is said that perhaps they have eaten the crows, and they always crow like crows in their life and in their social activities. So that is why she has given this name to this title to the novel. Then another point should also be noted about this title, that the Parsi families, after the death of their members or their individuals, they throw their dead bodies in the open, and these bodies are being eaten by the crows and the birds. So that is also perhaps one of the reasons that she has given this title, The Crow Eaters, to her novel. Then there is also an autobiographical note in this novel, because Pepsi Sidhwa herself belongs to this community, Parsi community, and she has also, her family also migrated to Lahore. She was actually born in Karachi, and then she migrated with her family to Lahore. So an autobiographical note can also be identified in this novel. Then there is theme of ethnicity. We know that it is an ethnic community, that is the Parsi community. So that theme is also running parallel into this into the plot of this novel. And also it is the post-colonial novel, because one of the writer, the post-colonial writer, who belongs to Pakistan, and she was trying to write about her community in the language of the rulers of that time, that is the English. So we can also place this novel as a post-colonial novel. Then there is the use of irony and humor. We know that it is the style of Pepsi Sidhwa that she uses irony and humor in order to portray her characters, as well as she uses this irony and humor in her plots. Then this novel has some elements of symbolism as well. For example, this family of Freddy, she belongs to the Parsi community, and this may be a symbol of all those families who represent some community. So actually this family is the representative of all those families who belong to some minority community. So these could also be the sub-issues of the novel that could be discussed. Now we come to the last phase of our lesson, and I am going to give you an exercise for solution. You will solve this exercise at your place and send me the soft copy of this of your answer or solution. And you have to write, how does Pepsi Sidhwa portray the culture and tradition of the Parsi community? So whatever we have learned in today's lesson, you will have to write those elements of culture and tradition that are representative of the Parsi community. This comes to the end of our today's lesson, and I hope that you will solve this exercise and send me the soft copy of your solution as early as possible. That's all for today. Stay safe.